Hey, what's going on, traders? It's Johnny here with Trader X. Thank you guys so much for tuning back into the channel. I really do hope you guys are all having an amazing day and we're able to end green. And as usual, I'm going to go ahead and get right into today's recap. And as you guys can tell from the thumbnail, unfortunately, today was another red day yet again. And so I was down $86 on SQQQ and I made about $31 on TQQQ, right? So that puts my day trading total to about down $55 on the day. But with my swing position on Tesla being green, I pretty much was broken even in terms of my account. And so these are all my field orders. You guys can see the timestamps are here on the left of when I was trading, the quantity I was trading with. The ETF itself is right here in the middle, and then the price points that I was buying in and out are here on the right for your reference. But I'm going to go ahead and get right into today's recap. And so what I pretty much wanted to talk about today was, in my progress and how, it's been going. So obviously, if you guys have been tuning into the channel, you know that for like the past month, maybe even a bit longer, my brother and I have really been struggling to, stay green at all. And we're probably down over $1,000, right? Just these past 3 weeks to a month. So that is a significant amount of money. And it's enough to make me, want to start thinking about possibly paper trading again or just scaling back. And I did mention in today's or yesterday's video after that big loss, but today it was a bit more how I normally trade, right, in terms of the results. But yeah, I want to go ahead and explain to you guys what I think led to me ending red on the day. And just, as frustrating as it is, I do need to make sure that I am learning something out of the mistakes I make every day and that I'm sharing it with you guys, right? So you guys can hopefully avoid these mistakes as well in the future. But in terms of what I pretty much wanted to talk about, so the NASDAQ itself, right? As it opened up, this thing started to shoot up. And I actually didn't take any trades until, about 6:40, right? So right when I saw this thing overextended at the top view up, I decided to get into SQQQ. And as you guys can tell, right? So I got in at 6:40 and I ended up having to stop out a few times for a loss because as this thing would fall, I would get in and then this thing would end up making a higher high, making me want to sell out. And then as this thing would fall again right and break below the EMA, I would buy into SQQQ only for this thing to reverse. And I ultimately on the third time did end up making money here, but it was a bit disappointing for me because I averaged up right around this area. So as this thing pushed up and I got stopped out twice on SQQQ, it ended up falling, right? I got back in. And then as this thing popped back up, I was thinking of averaging up and I actually sent it. This thing went a little bit above the price point, right, where I averaged up at, and I ended up having to cut it because I just did not want to take a big loss the way I did yesterday. So I was really just trying to manage my risk if I was fully invested. And that ultimately ended up to me leading, to not trading the best, right? So as you guys can tell, this thing ended up selling off, right? And from where I averaged up, that could have been over $100 trade there, right? If I ended up cutting it down here at middle VWAP. And so it was pretty disappointing, but at the same time, I was just trying to focus really on buying into something that was in my direction today. And so ultimately, as this thing ended up selling off to middle VWAP, I actually ended up getting into TQQQ and making, my money back on this trade here, right? And so I ended up cutting it for a profit. This thing ended up dumping back down to middle VWAP. I bought back in, and then I believe I sold out right around here for profit. So I was actually able to make back all my losses on the day and even make some profit. So I was actually, believe it or not, up about $70, maybe a bit more to be honest, in terms of profiting on the day after this point here. But from this point on, I pretty much ended up giving everything back on, and some more, right? So that's why I was down 55. And the trade that really pretty much did it was, I would say, heading into here, right? So I saw that right at market open, the NASDAQ pushed up to top view up and got rejected, which is something I've been, looking out for a lot. And the reason for that is if you can see the NASDAQ on the bigger time frame, right? If you zoom on in, any single time it would approach the top VWAP, right? It would get rejected. It did it here. It did it here again. It got rejected. It did it twice here, right? It did it here again where it got, and even throughout this little chop, right? It would get rejected at top VWAP. It ended up breaking out a bit, getting rejected by top VWAP and falling. And so I knew that there was a strong resistance level at around top VWAP. So that's why, heading into today, I was pretty much trying to do my best to take advantage of that pattern. So as this thing would push up to the right top VWAP, I bought into SQQQ. This thing ended up going south, right? And then right over here, as it pushed up, it went south. And then it started to go in my favor again, right? And so I was pretty happy with this little pullback. I was expecting it to honestly sell off to middle VWAP, and I was gonna cut my trade there for profit and end on the day probably around $100 profit. But obviously, right, as we can tell, this thing ended up finding a support on the SMA line. It made a high on the day, and I still didn't cut it. So I did a bad job of managing my risk on this last trade. I still didn't cut it. This thing, indicated signs that it was going to get rejected off the top VWAP again, but right, it ended up reversing, and it was just very bullish today. And as you guys can tell, I did a horrible job of managing my risk. All it takes is one trade for you to not follow through with your plan for it to really wreck you on the day, right? And so use me as an example. This thing ended up pushing up, right, to top VWAP, and this thing was holding. So it wasn't just getting rejected like it did in the morning and falling. And what this could have indicated to me was, direction is definitely not in my favor if I'm trying to get into the inverse ETF, especially right around this time. What I should have been more aware of is the fact that it was 11 a.m. by this point, so market was only going to be open for another 2 hours. And in the grand scheme of things, did I really think this thing was going to reverse all the way down? Well, I did so as I was trading, right? But looking back in hindsight, it obviously, probably would have been in my best interest to cut it, especially after this thing continued to surge. So, right, I bought in around here. I think I tried averaging up with a small amount of shares right around this area as I saw it get rejected. But as this thing continued to climb, I literally did not cut losses until right around this area. Like literally right at the top is when I decided to finally call it quits, right? And by then I had already lost the $70 in profit plus $55, right, on top of that. So I did a horrible job of managing my risk. I let this thing run way more than I should have, right? So this thing I let it run over almost 3 to 4% before I decided to cut it. That is absolutely ridiculous, right? That should not be a trade that ever happens. And so heading into tomorrow and the rest of the week, I'm going to do my best to make sure that if I'm ever down, say, more than 1% on the trade, just cut it no matter what, because there's always a chance it can continue to climb like it did. And I was just giving away money at that point, right? So it definitely was not being very productive of me to be very hopeful that this thing was going to reverse. I know there was a pattern that it tended to follow, right? Where it would touch top VWAP and follow bottom VWAP, right? But as we know in the stock market, right, patterns, they tend to repeat themselves, but they don't always have to, right? And so today was a really good day of learning that lesson for me, right? As I mentioned, this thing, I really thought it would struggle at these higher levels, but it ultimately didn't. And the reason why, I feel like I struggled even more today was looking back at it in hindsight. This thing definitely had margin for it to climb on the day, right? The way it did. I should have looked at it the past 10 days. Yeah, it does get rejected at the top VWAP, right? But ultimately, once it has a nice sell-off, it ends up recovering, right? So we had this nice sell-off, tried recovering a bit. Had this nice sell-off, recovered a bit. Had this nice sell-off, recovered a bit. Had this nice sell-off, right? Tried recovering, but then we had an even bigger sell-off here. And so it would make sense based off previous patterns that this thing would recover on the day, right? Doesn't mean it has to, but what I was, identifying was there was obviously a common resistance around this area, common support around this area, right? So I should have focused more on these general areas that are good deals and bad deals, right? The better deals are buying closer to the bottom line, right? If you're going to go long on the NASDAQ, and, the better deals for the inverse ETF were closer to the top, right? Where it tends to get rejected. So now we are a bit more overextended, right? And if it does follow this pattern heading into tomorrow, we should expect some form of drop. But, as we know, like I mentioned, the pattern doesn't have to repeat itself, right? For all we know, it could have ended here. It can pull back a bit and then use this general resistance area as a new support, right? It could pull back and then end up surging on the day, or the next few days to come, right? So we really just have to follow up with it and see what happens. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over in terms of my recap today. But I just do want to, talk to you guys briefly about, my performance and what I'm going to be doing moving forward. So as you guys know, my brother and I haven't been doing the best for the past month or so. we're probably down, I would say, over $1,000 just trading the past 3 weeks to a month. And so that's obviously getting to a point where we need to, take a step back and really, um, assess ourselves and realize what is it that we keep doing wrong, and, how can we improve. And with trading, especially when you're trading with real money, it can be very, what's the word? I would say discouraging in a way, right? When you're not performing the way you want to. And what I need to do is really be humble about it, and not only, share with you guys my losses and try not to like lie about it or anything like that, like, others may want to at this moment in time. What I, what instead want to do is lead by example to you guys, and then maybe let you guys know, if you guys are struggling with trading, what are some things that you can do to help. And so since I'm definitely struggling, I have been the past month, what I'm going to start doing, right, is most likely starting next week, I'm going to be paper trading or trading with a smaller dollar amount, right? So I'm trading with $10,000 right now. The consistency obviously isn't there. So in my opinion, it doesn't make sense for me to keep trading with this dollar amount when I can just scale back and still be learning those lessons, but at a cheaper cost, right? So say I'm trading with $10,000, a 1% day of me being red is me being down $100, right? Now, would I rather be down $100, or if I know I'm consistently not doing well, why not scale back to maybe $5,000 or even $1,000 to trade with, right? Where I can still get that emotional aspect of trading, right? And it's not too little of a dollar amount to where I stop caring about it, but it's still enough for me to, be invested in it. And at the same time, I can learn these lessons at a cheaper cost, right? So rather than lose $100 on a day off, these lessons that I'm learning, can only be, losing $10 a day if I'm trading with $1,000. So it's all in perspective, right? And all you that really matters is that you're able to consistently grow an account no matter what size, right? You could be trading with $100,000, you could be trading with a dollar, right? As if you're able to show up every day and be consistent, I would rather be the person that has $1,000 account, but I'm consistently profitable, than even have $1 million and be not consistent with it. And the reason for that is the person who's consistent, right? It's all a matter of just saving more money and then using that money to scale. The person who has $1 million, they may have $1 million, but if they try day trading with it, they're going to get humbled really quick, and those losses are really going to add up, right? So it's always more important to be consistent, even if it's with trading with a smaller dollar amount where you're, tuning your fine craft and refining everything, rather than just, completely just blowing money when you don't need to. And, I'm at that point where I feel like I'm consistently proved to myself for about a month that I'm not as profitable as or just consistently green, right, as I should be. And because of that reason, I'm going to go ahead and try to, scale down or take a step back, or just even paper trade, right, with $10,000. I feel like those are two good options that I'm definitely going to be trying out, and that, I definitely recommend to you guys if you guys are struggling. But yeah, other than that, I do want to, just express my thoughts again, and just how this channel, I really want it to be a good platform for you guys to tune on in, and, just to almost be aware that not every single trader is making money right now, right? I'm obviously been struggling a lot, and, it's all about showing up every day. So that's obviously all I can ask for of myself, is to show up every day and then try to learn from my mistakes, right? And as long as you guys continue to do that and not give up, I really don't see why, we can't be consistent traders together in the future, right? But yeah, that's my little rant for the day, and that's everything I pretty much wanted to talk about today. Thank you guys so much for your time again, and if you guys are new to the channel, please go ahead and consider subscribing, and or dropping a like or comment on the video. Even if you want me to break down anything or want me to make a video on anything, I'm more than happy to do that. But that's been my recap for today. I will be trading and posting tomorrow, so I will see you guys then. Take care and have a good rest of your day.